Assalamu alaikum and welcome back to another episode of Manifesting Muslimah. I'm your host, Zara Pedersen, and in today's episode, we are going to look at ayat number 74 from Surah Yunus. But before we do that, just a quick message as per usual. The Quran that I am reading from is the one that I am selling on Amazon and also digitally. My Quran journal, it's translated by Maulana Wahiduddin Khan. It is entirely in English, so anybody can pick up this book. So you know what translation that I'm using in case you're sitting and wondering like where you can get it yourself, or if your Quran kind of has different wordings on the same ayats that I am reading. All right, okay, so ayat number 74 from Surah Yunus. The reason, and I feel like I just need to say this before I actually dive into it, because the reason why I am looking at this specific ayat today actually comes from a coaching call I had this morning with one of my clients, and I used this as an example because she had a question about sort of how do I read some of these things and read it and make it personal to me, because some of the examples and things that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala speaks about in the Quran are, you know, examples of the days of the prophets, of course, but how certain people were punished for certain things, how some people were rewarded for certain things. And so how do we then read the Quran and make it applicable to us and personable to us rather than looking at it as a general thing? And this is because, you know, I've said a few times, of course, that if you want to get close to Allah, you need to start reading your Quran to get to know Him. So set the intention of, you know, opening the Quran, reading it in a language that you understand to see what God is actually saying. So I was looking for an example in the Quran and I came on this one, and that's the one I'm going to be using today. So in this ayah, in this story, right before this ayah, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, tell them the story of Noah. He said to his people, my people, if my presence amongst you and my preaching to you of God's revelations offends you, know that I put my trust in God. So agree on your course of action along with your partner gods, and let no hesitation deflect you from it, and then put it into effect against me and give me no respite. So basically, it's the story of Noah where, you know, he's warning the people, you know, something's going to happen. There's going to be this big flood. Come with me. Allah has come to me and warned me. I've built this ark. This is, you know, the deal. And then in ayah number 74, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, after him we sent other messengers to their respective peoples, and they brought them clear proofs. But they would not believe in the truth because they had rejected it before. Thus we seal up the hearts of the transgressors. And the reason why I came to this specific example was because of my client came with that kind of example. Like, well, how am I supposed to read this if it's not sort of like a mankind thing? And here's what I said to her and what I will say to you, because when we read this just comes up as like, oh, this happened in story. So this is what happened in the days of Noah. So I'm just reading story time, but like there's not necessarily anything applicable to me here. However, when I read it, and I will actually show this to you because whenever I read it, however long ago it was that I read this, I highlighted it in my Quran journal because it stood out to me that much, because it spoke to me personally. And it spoke to me because this to me is an example, and there are loads of them throughout the Quran, where Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala speaks about sending signs and messengers to people and the people still rejecting it. This to me speaks about to me personally, about how grateful I should feel and should always be that I have Islam and that I have seen the signs and recognized the signs and you know, falling in line or whatever you want to call it, like I'm following Islam, I'm following Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, and that I'm not denying Allah or any of his signs or his messengers. And also to the fact that he then continues and says, thus we seal up the hearts of the transgressors. I can't remember actually I don't think I did it in a podcast episode. I think it might have been a TikTok video of the the dua that the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam, where he speaks of O turner of hearts, because he speaks of the fact that each person's heart is between the two like fingernails of Allah, and at any moment he can sort of like turn it towards himself or away from him. And of course we want our hearts turned towards Allah, and that means of course that Allah at any moment can choose to turn us off of him, or sort of make us blind to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. So when I read this, and the reason why I've highlighted it is because to me, while it is an example of something that happened in the days of Prophet Noah alayhi salam, and the way that the people would turn away from him and his message, and how the messengers who followed him and the people who would turn away from him and deny him their messages, it could happen to any one of us still, and it still does. There are lots of people who are denying Islam, and there are lots of people who are denying the existence of God. And may we never be amongst those people, Allahumma ameen, that we are constantly turning towards Allah. But this serves as a reminder. So when we're reading something like that, and while it doesn't say, and you have to do this, and then you don't do this, and this is who I am specifically to you, this is a reminder. This is a reminder, number one, to be grateful for Islam, grateful that we see the message and we see the sign, and that we're not denying it. And number two, be grateful and continuously pray and be God-fearing of Allah, in that he never turns our hearts away from him, so that we become one of the transgressors who deny Islam as a whole. And please, I think I didn't say this in the beginning, and I do want to actually just say this as well in this episode, that this is how I read this. Any of my Thursday episodes where I go through a specific ayat in the Quran, please do your own research as well. This is how I am reading it. I am sharing it with you because I'm hoping that it can inspire you, of course, to open up your Quran and start reading it, because it is absolutely full of so much knowledge. We already know this, and yet some of us keep postponing it or taking it for granted. But also because I want to show you how many ways that you can read the Quran and it's still being the truth, it's still being applicable. Because I can probably read this from a different time, in a different time, and it meaning something completely different, but still being relevant and still being the truth. And that is the magic of this wonderful book, the magnificent Quran that Allah has sent to us, that it is never, you can never read it wrong. You can never ever read it wrong. Every time you read it and you're coming to the Quran with an intention to draw nearer to Allah or to get to know Allah, something will reveal itself in there to you. And I want to share my perspective again to inspire you and motivate you, inshallah, to open up your Qur'ans, but also to increase you in this, in your, what's the word? Is there ever an episode, ever, where I don't forget a word? Please let me know. If you can think of a single episode where I don't say, I forgot the word, tag me in it, because that was clearly like a 1 in a million. But I want to also strengthen your belief in yourself and your belief to stand on your own understanding of Islam, that you know, your heart knows, your soul knows. You don't need the validation from everybody else. You don't need somebody else to read the Quran for you and tell you what it says. It is okay for you, and very much promoted within Islam, that you pick up your Quran for yourself and also understand and read what it is that Allah is saying to us. But this specific one, because I do think that quite often when a lot of us sit down to read the Quran, we will look at things that speak directly to us, or feels like it speaks directly to us, or something where it speaks directly to, this is how inheritance should be divvied up, this is how to get divorced, this is how to get married, this is the halal and haram, that it has to be sort of like very much black and white. And then we're forgetting sometimes to read in between those things and seeing that everything in the Quran has a purpose. And so even though this is, a story of Noah, and by the way, the story of Noah is repeated several times throughout the Quran. This isn't the only place or the only surah where Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala mentions the story of Noah, and he speaks about how when Noah tried to warn his people, that a lot of them denied his message. This is just one of those examples, but each and every single time he shares the story with a slight different nuance, with another little detail, with another little element, creating perhaps a focus on something new that wasn't there before. And again, this is just how I read it, and my example as I was sharing it to my client this morning during our one-on-one coaching session, that even something like this, when we're looking into it, this isn't just a question of like, he just wants to punish people, but how could they know, or whatever, reading it as a general. This is a reminder for all of us today who have Islam, that it has nothing to do necessarily with mankind. When we're reading the Quran, of course it is the Quran for mankind, but when we're reading it, we have to read it also how it speaks to us, what it reminds us of, how it can remind us of the things to be grateful for, but also the things that we should fear. And for me personally, reading this, the fear is to lose Allah. The fear is to become blind to the signs and to the message of his messengers. And that makes something that we otherwise might have read and kind of skimmed through just because, it's part of the story of Noah. I know that story. I've read it 1,000 times. My mum used to tell me as a kid, they've made Disney movies or whatever out of it. I don't even know if they've made a Disney movie out of Noah, but maybe they will if they haven't already. And then, of course, it continues right after this in ayat 75. Then we sent forth Moses and Aaron with our signs to Pharaoh. So it's like you can kind of get lost a little bit in the history of it and not read into the message that may also be hiding in plain sight for you in the Quran. And this, again, truly makes this magnificent book all the more powerful when we're sitting down, not just to read, but to understand, when we're reading from our soul and not from the logic, the place of just like, what are the words saying, but how is my soul reading it? How am I reading it from a place of from a place of my deen, from a place of my iman? That's the place that we want to read the Quran from sometimes, and that will sometimes make these little places of the Quran pop and really stand out to us, where other places we might have ignored it. We might have just read through and been like, yeah, okay, next story. What's the next thing I can take away from the Quran? Okay, so I'm going to leave that here. Just a quick little one for you today. I hope, though, that it can inspire you to perhaps even go back and reread some of the surahs that you may have read in the past and see if something stands out to you again, but from a different perspective, not necessarily because it says it black on white, but because your soul reads something in those specific ayats that is reminding you to be grateful for your iman, for Islam in general, for your relationship with Allah, or that makes you perhaps even want to go to your prayer mat again and make a dua to say thank you for not closing my heart off to you, or please never close my heart off to you, which, by the way, several of the messengers, if not every single messenger, made that dua to continuously to Allah, to never turn their hearts away from him. So if they make that dua, maybe it would be a good idea for the rest of us also to incorporate that kind of dua into our daily practices as well. All right, my darling. Again, the Quran that I'm reading from is the Quran Journal. It is linked everywhere that I can link it. If you are hearing this or watching this before the end of Ramadan, and potentially about a week after Ramadan as well, it is on sale, the physical copy, because it is a very expensive book to print. Not for me, for Amazon. And I know how some people feel about Amazon. I get it. I do too. But, I can't afford to print this book. If you have that kind of money lying around and you would like to support this as an independent project, feel free to reach out to me. But until then, it kind of has to be Amazon. But it is an expensive book the rest of the year. And during the month of Ramadan, I put it on sale. It'll be probably around another, I don't know how long we've got right now left of Ramadan, but probably another 10 days or so on sale. And then it'll go back to its normal price with this, which is quite hefty. So if you want to get it at a bit more of a discount, now is the time to get this Quran journal. Otherwise, it won't be on sale again until next year, inshallah, for Ramadan. And yeah, I think that's all. I don't know. I will probably see you on Monday. I'm a little hesitant just because I don't know if it's Eid. And if it is Eid, I might want to take the day off. I might also want to sit down and record an episode. I haven't quite made up my mind yet. But if it is Eid on Monday, then Eid Mubarak. I hope that you have had a wonderful Ramadan. I hope that Allah accepts your efforts, your fasts, your prayers, your du'as this year, and that He makes you live long enough to see it again next year, inshallah. And there was another thing I wanted to say. I forgot it already. I had a little brain toot. Clearly, it must not have been that important then. But if I don't see you on Monday, then I'll definitely see you Thursday in 1 week, or the Thursday after, inshallah. Take care of yourself. Have a wonderful time. Eid Mubarak. Enjoy yourself. Enjoy these last couple of days of Ramadan, inshallah. And I will see you in my next episode, inshallah. But until then, I am fully out of practice. What is going on here? But until then, my dear friend, please don't forget to live in love.